The rain had been falling for 3 days straight, not in angry sheets or thunderous bursts, but in a slow, ceaseless drizzle that clung to everything it touched. It seeped through the earth, dripped from cracked rooftops, and slithered beneath the skin like a cold whisper from the grave. I hadn't been back to Koh Tang village in over 20 years, a forgotten town nestled deep in the mist-choked mountains of Yunnan. I never planned to return until the letter arrived. Old, yellowed, with ink faded by time. If it rains for 3 days without end, and a red umbrella stands at the village fork, you must return. Do not ask why. Grandfather. I used to think he'd gone senile in his final years, whispering nonsense about spirits, bent shadows, and crooked brides. But when the 3rd day of rain came and didn't stop, I felt something tighten in my chest. Not fear, not grief, something older. The bus dropped me off 3 kilometers outside the village. No driver would go farther. When I asked why, the man only shook his head. That place isn't meant to be lived in anymore. So I walked. The air was thick with fog, heavy, the kind that sticks to your skin and weighs down your breath. Every step into Koh Tang felt like stepping deeper into a dream I couldn't wake from. Then I saw it. At the fork in the road, where the old shrine once stood, there it was, a red paper umbrella, standing upright, unmoving, and crooked. It wasn't broken, but it wasn't right either. The ribs bent subtly, as if someone had tried to fold it in half, then changed their mind halfway through. The paper wasn't fresh red. It was a dark, sickly shade, like dried blood after a week in the sun. My feet froze. Every child from this village knew the tale. If the rains last 3 days and a red umbrella appears in the road, do not pass, do not stare, and never, ever touch it. I used to laugh at that. Urban legend, Grandma's bedtime scare tactic. But now, standing there, soaked to the bone, I couldn't laugh. I couldn't. I stepped around it, carefully, heart thudding, not daring to breathe too loud. But just before I turned away, I saw something. Behind the umbrella. Not a person, not fully, just a pair of pale feet, bare, boneless, sinking into the mud like roots, motionless. By the time I reached the village gate, my hands were trembling. The old wooden arch still stood, eaten by moss, its paint faded to ghost gray. A carved plaque read, "Koh Tang Village, home to peace." The irony burned my throat. The houses looked the same, but the air didn't. It was heavier, thicker, like the village had been holding its breath for too long. An old woman sweeping her porch paused as I passed. Her eyes locked with mine. "You came back, Kai. This time you won't leave." I blinked, but when I turned to question her, she was already gone. Only mist remained. That night, I stayed in my grandfather's house. Dust coated everything. The fireplace was cold. The oil lamp flickered nervously. I told myself it was just a coincidence, just an umbrella, just a village, just a storm. But at 3:17 a.m., I awoke to the sound of dripping, not from inside the house, but from just beyond the door. I crept toward the front steps, barefoot, the wooden floor groaning beneath me. And there it was, standing upright in the rain, the same crooked red umbrella, now on my doorstep. I didn't open the door. I stood behind it, watching through the slats of the warped wooden frame. The red umbrella was still there, not swaying, not moving, just standing upright under the pouring rain like it had roots in the earth and no reason to fear drowning. A part of me hoped it would vanish by morning, that when sunlight came, if it ever came, it would dissolve like a bad dream. But Koh Tong hadn't seen the sun in days, and in this village, some dreams don't end with waking. I stepped out at dawn, boots sinking into the saturated soil. The umbrella was gone, but the mud where it had stood, undisturbed. No footprints, no trail, just the faint, unnatural curve of something having pressed there all night long, something that shouldn't have been able to leave without leaving a mark. The old woman who'd spoken to me the day before was back on her porch, sweeping, slowly, the same motion, over and over, like she was erasing something no one else could see. "You saw it," she said without looking up. "Didn't you?" I nodded. She stopped sweeping. "Did you touch it?" "No." Her shoulders loosened with a breath she hadn't taken in years. "Good. Then you might still leave whole." I sat with her that morning. She made bitter tea from withered leaves and poured it into chipped cups shaped like tiny coffins. Her name was Lianying. She was Koh Tong's last storyteller and the keeper of its oldest curse. "Do you know why the umbrella is red?" I shrugged. "To match the bride's dress?" She chuckled, low, hollow. "To hide the blood," she whispered. And then she told me the tale. Long ago, in the Qing dynasty, a girl named Mei Lian lived in Koh Tong. A quiet beauty, gentle hands, kind smile. She was betrothed to a wealthy magistrate from the east. The match was arranged, unwanted, but she obeyed, because that's what daughters did. On her wedding night, the rain came, heavy, endless. The ceremony was delayed. The groom was drunk, angry. He took her by force in the bridal chamber, and when she tried to flee, bleeding, crying, he accused her of dishonor. She was buried alive beneath the wedding shrine, a hole carved by hand just wide enough for her to kneel in. Her red wedding umbrella was jammed through her stomach, pinning her to the earth like a butterfly on parchment. The villagers were made to watch. They said nothing, did nothing. Their silence bent her soul, and before her final breath, she swore, "Those who stand while I was forced to kneel will bow. Those who touched what broke me will break. You cannot fix what died crooked." I stared into my teacup. The leaves had arranged themselves into a perfect spiral, like the ribs of an umbrella. "The curse isn't in the umbrella itself," Lianying said. "It's in the temptation to set it straight. That's what she waits for." "Waits for what?" I asked. Her eyes met mine, clouded, deep. "For a savior, a fool, someone who believes tragedy can be undone if they just try hard enough." She leaned closer. "And when they do, their shadow shifts." That night, I heard it, a sound beneath the storm, like paper folding, over and over, soft, deliberate. I looked out the window. There, on the road again, was the umbrella. Not where it stood last, closer, just a few steps from my gate. And I swear, it was open. The next morning, I stepped outside before the fog could fully gather. The umbrella was gone. Again. But I didn't feel relieved. The air was heavier than before, thicker, like trying to breathe through silk soaked in water. My lungs ached. My footsteps echoed strangely, as if the village had become hollow overnight. That's when I noticed it. My shadow. It wasn't following me. It was walking beside me. At first, I blamed the angle of the sun, except there was no sun. The sky remained blanketed in gray, light diffused in every direction. No single light source, no direction. But still, there it was, my shadow, pacing to my left, like a silent twin. And it wasn't right. Its shoulders sloped. Its head leaned at a disturbing angle, just slightly unnatural, like something had bent the spine and left it that way. And its legs moved, half a second after mine. I backed away from the street into the narrow alley beside my grandfather's house, just to test it. The shadow followed, but it didn't pivot. It slid like a smear across a wet page. I raised my hand. The shadow did too, late. It was subtle, but unmistakable. And worse, it wasn't touching my feet anymore. It hovered just slightly apart, a fracture in the connection between me and the thing I thought was mine. I told myself I was imagining it, sleep-deprived, paranoid, still rattled by Lao Nyang's story. But when I passed the broken mirror in the old tailor's shop window, I froze, because my reflection was fine, except the eyes. They were looking the wrong way, not toward me, not at the road, but upward, toward the sky. Mouth closed, body still, but the eyes were scanning something above me. And I could feel it. Something watching, something standing just over my shoulder, though nothing was there. I ran back to the house. Inside, I checked every mirror, every surface, every angle, trying to catch my own eyes misbehaving again. Eventually, I ripped the bathroom mirror from the wall and smashed it in the sink. My reflection grinned as it shattered. By sunset, the fog had crept in like a second skin over the village. People didn't leave their homes. Curtains stayed shut. Lights stayed dim. The silence was no longer peaceful. It was strategic, a way to keep from being noticed. And I began to understand why. Because the thing outside wasn't hunting the loudest. It was hunting the brightest, the ones who noticed too much, the ones who thought they could trace its outline. I lit a candle that night, not for warmth, but to test the shadow again. And what I saw was not mine. The shadow on the wall had too many fingers. One hand had 6, the other 7, and the head slightly larger, tilted, smiling. But I wasn't smiling. I blew out the candle. Darkness swallowed everything. And in that absolute silence, I heard it again. The soft rustle of paper. Folding, folding, closer, always closer. By the 4th night, I stopped checking the windows. It didn't matter anymore. Whether the umbrella was there or not, I could feel it. Its shape, its weight, its silence. It wasn't watching me. It was waiting. I tried to sleep. I really did, but my body refused. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt like I was falling, not downward, but sideways. like the axis of the world had shifted a few degrees, and I was the only one who noticed. Lying flat on the floor didn't help. Neither did covering the mirrors or lighting incense like the old villagers used to. The unease wasn't in the room. It was inside my bones. I kept waking up soaked in sweat, my spine aching, shoulders numb. At first, I blamed the weather, the humidity, the age of the house. But by the third night, the pain had moved. My joints clicked when I stood. My neck stiffened at odd angles. And when I stretched my arms in front of the mirror, they didn't line up. My right hand looked slightly higher than the left, barely noticeable. I adjusted, raised one shoulder, tilted my head. Still wrong, as if something had quietly, precisely tilted my skeleton, one vertebra at a time. By morning, I had a new habit, checking my reflection in every puddle. Not for vanity, for symmetry. But no matter where I looked, reflections in water, in glass, in steel, something was always off. My mouth appeared a little wider. My smile stretched too long, like my skin forgot where to stop. My eyes, once centered, were now just a little uneven. One iris higher, one blink slower, one always looking away. At the local clinic, abandoned now but still full of dusty equipment, I found a cracked X-ray screen. I stood before it, lifting my shirt in front of a cracked mirror, half hoping to see nothing. Instead, I saw a bulge under my ribs, a knot, not soft like a muscle, not sharp like bone. It pulsed, like folded paper waiting to unfold. The village had begun to change too. People didn't speak anymore, not in full sentences, only nods, only wary glances. Conversations were cut short, doors bolted before sunset. Children no longer played near the shrine. And at the base of the old banyan tree where the children used to gather, a new red umbrella had appeared. Still crooked, still soaked, but this time, open. The children said nothing, but none of them went near it. Except one, a boy, maybe 7, big eyes, barefoot. He touched it. He didn't scream, he didn't run. He simply stared at the umbrella for a long moment, then turned and walked away. And the next morning, he was gone. That night, I heard whispers, not outside, not in the wind, inside, the walls, inside the house, inside my head. Whispers in a language I didn't know, but that my body seemed to remember. Words that tasted like wet ink and burnt wood. You can't smooth what was buried crumpled. What bent in death will bend in you. I pressed my hands to my ears. I rocked in the dark like a child, but the whispers grew louder, not in volume, but in proximity, as if they were folding themselves closer. I lit a candle. The flame bent sideways, not from wind, but like it was obeying a new kind of gravity. And in the corner of the room, where no one had stood in hours, a fresh footprint, small, bare, pressed deep into the wet wooden floorboards. But that wasn't what stopped my breath. It was the imprint beside it, not a footprint, but an imprint of something circular, and just slightly off-center. The old village archive was hidden beneath the shrine. Few remembered it existed, fewer dared go near. But I did, not because I was brave, because I was desperate. The folding had started. I could feel it every time I breathed, a tightness in my ribs, a pull behind my eyes, like something was slowly, patiently bending me from the inside out. I pried open the warped door with both hands. Dust spilled out like smoke. The air was thick with mildew, mold, and something metallic. Old blood, maybe, or old grief. Inside, I found records, rotting scrolls, tattered journals, forgotten ink. And buried in the back, wrapped in red cloth tied with faded wedding thread, Mei Lian's death record. But it wasn't just a death certificate. It was a witness account, written in the same crooked calligraphy as the curse carved into the shrine wall. And it read, "On the 13th night of the rain month, the bride Mei Lian was taken into the bridal room. She was offered wine laced with lotus root and crushed pearl. When she awoke, her garments had been torn, her body soiled, her mind quiet. She did not scream, she did not fight. She simply said, 'I thought I would become a wife. I became a warning instead.' The groom, offended by her silence, accused her of wickedness, said her mouth held secrets, said her shadow moved on its own. He ordered her buried under the shrine, alive. The umbrella, gifted to her as a wedding token, was used to pin her in place, through her stomach, through her voice. No rites, no prayers, only rain. She died kneeling, bent in silence. Her last words, 'You cannot unbend what you broke to silence me.' I sat in the dark, the paper trembling in my hands. Suddenly the whispers I'd been hearing every night weren't just noise. They were her voice, crooked, muffled, trying to unfold from the pages of history, to be heard. And now I'd read them aloud. I had become her witness. When I stepped outside, the sky was darker than it should have been. The clouds hung low, pressing on the rooftops. A soft drizzle fell, not enough to drench, but enough to smear the lines between past and present. Then I heard it. Paper. Unfolding, slowly, just behind me. I turned. No one there. But the road in front of me had changed. There, at the center of the fork, was the umbrella again. Except this time, it was not just standing. It was open. And under it, a woman. Back turned, hair long, wet, hanging like black silk ropes. Her dress red, soaked, torn at the shoulder. She held the umbrella with both hands, even though it was already planted in the ground. And she was not breathing. She was waiting. I stepped forward, once, twice. Then I stopped. Her head turned slightly, just enough to show her profile, and her face was mine, but bent. Mouth too wide, eyes too far apart, cheekbones stretched like someone had pulled her skin sideways. "You want to set me right," she said, in my voice. "You want to undo what they did. But love bent me, and death kept me folded." She dropped the umbrella. It didn't fall. It sank, straight into the earth. I stumbled backward, my knees buckled. The woman, the reflection, the bride was gone, but the umbrella remained. Only now it stood on its own again, crooked, blood slowly dripping from its tip, despite the rain. Back at the house, I collapsed into the corner. My reflection stared from the glass cabinet door. It smiled again, and now one side of my mouth followed. My left eye blinked slower than the right. My neck leaned, My shoulder twitched. I knew what was happening. I wasn't just cursed. I was becoming part of her. I stopped trusting mirrors, not because they lied, because they hesitated. Every time I moved, my reflection was just a moment late, like it needed time to remember who I was. Sometimes it blinked out of sync. Sometimes it didn't blink at all. And one morning, it didn't appear at all. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror for almost 5 minutes, my hands gripped to the edge of the cracked sink. My breath fogged the glass, but the mirror showed nothing. No face, no outline, no shadow, just an empty room behind me. I turned. The room was full of me. I looked again. The mirror stayed silent, a reflection with no echo. I ran to the hallway, to the tall mirror near the door, the antique one with carvings of lotus petals and dragonflies. My face appeared, finally. But something was wrong. Not my expression, not my shape. It was the background. In the mirror, the hallway behind me was different. The wallpaper was torn, the wooden floor was cracked, and there, just behind my shoulder, was a red umbrella, closed, resting against the wall. I turned around in real life. Nothing. But in the mirror, the umbrella was open. I backed away, slowly. My reflection stayed still, just smiling. Later that day, I tried filming myself. I set up my phone on the old bookshelf and hit record, sat down and stared directly into the lens. 20 minutes passed. When I reviewed the footage, my body was there, but my face was blurred. Not pixelated, just smeared, like wet ink dragged across paper. Like someone had tried to draw me, then wiped the page with their palm. And when I paused the video at exactly 11:47, the reflection of the window behind me showed a figure. Long black hair, red garment, head tilted too far to the side like a marionette with its strings cut, holding an umbrella. I called Lao Nyang. She answered after one ring, her voice already trembling. She said, "Don't film yourself. Don't invite the thing in the mirror to learn your movements. That's how it mimics. That's how it replaces." That night, I covered every mirror in the house, every window, every reflective surface. I even unplugged my phone and turned the screen face down. But the house still didn't feel safe, because it wasn't about glass anymore. The reflections weren't trapped in frames. They had started to follow me. And worse, they were learning how to get it right. I caught my reflection watching me through the surface of a pot of water. I wasn't even near it, but the ripples settled, and I saw my face. Smiling, eyes blank, hands slowly folding an umbrella I wasn't holding. I screamed, splashed the water, shattered the bowl. But deep in the splash, I heard a whisper. "You're almost folded too." By sunrise, I couldn't remember how my face was supposed to look. I drew it over and over, and each time it changed. One eye too low, one cheek wider, a mouth that bent downward, then sideways. I tried again and again, but I could never draw it the same way twice, like my identity was being erased in layers, like someone else was sketching over me in red. In the final mirror I hadn't yet covered, the small one inside my grandfather's locket, I looked again, and this time there was no me, just the crooked umbrella, spinning slowly in rain that wasn't falling. Kotang never had dry seasons anymore. Locals said it was mountain mist. Weather apps said it was microclimate fog. But those who remembered the old stories knew better. The rain wasn't natural. It was ritual. Lao Niang called it sky mourning, a phenomenon that began the night Mei Lian was buried. The villagers didn't speak of it, not directly, but the record said the rain came down like needles, sharp, slanting, refusing to stop. For 7 days and 7 nights, not a single star was visible. On the 8th, the air turned red. Inside the forbidden shelves of the village library, I found a decaying bundle of scrolls, hidden beneath floorboards warped by time, tied in red string soaked in some old blackened residue. At the top of one scroll was a hand-painted emblem, a bride kneeling under a bleeding sky with an umbrella stabbed through her heart. Underneath, the name, the Lamentation Rite of Kotang. The scroll told a story older than the Qing dynasty, a curse, a wedding, a storm. Long ago, the village of Kotang was home to a spirit binder, a role always given to a bride. On the night of her wedding, she would bear the weight of the village's collective sorrow, wrap it into red silk, and seal it beneath her umbrella. The umbrella was not a shield, it was a cage. The rain was not weather, it was a ritual cleansing, and the bride was a sacrifice. The scroll was filled with blood-like ink and frantic brush strokes, warnings written in repeated characters. Do not deny the umbrella. Do not interrupt the rain. A crooked bride means a crooked world. One final passage had been added in newer handwriting, unsteady, furious. Mei Lian was not the first bride to kneel, but she was the first to kneel unwillingly. Her pain was not folded, it was torn. She did not seal the sorrow, she multiplied it. Now the rain will never end. Outside, thunder cracked. I looked through the boarded window. The umbrella was back, open, facing the house, tilting slowly in the wind. But this time, I saw something beneath it. Not a woman, not a shadow, but a wedding altar. Candles melted in reverse, offerings rotted and healed and rotted again. And behind the altar, a noose made of red silk, spinning in slow, wet circles. I shut the window. Lao Niang appeared in the doorway like a ghost. Her voice was raw. She wasn't supposed to be married. She was supposed to be mourned. But instead, they gave her a groom. And now, the sky mourns for her. She pressed something into my hands. A crumpled photo, black and white, old, streaked with water damage. But I could still make out the image. A group of villagers standing in the rain. Behind them, a young bride in red, her umbrella open, her face blurred. And behind her was my grandfather. It began in my fingers. A sharp tug, quick but deep, at the base of my knuckles, as if someone had tied invisible threads to my bones and pulled, not to break, but to bend. By evening, my joints ached even when still. My limbs trembled with every movement. But it wasn't weakness. It was arrangement. Like my body was being positioned for something, folded into place. I sat on the floor of my grandfather's room, surrounded by torn scrolls and red threads. The house creaked with wind, but the air never moved. Rain ticked against the roof with mechanical rhythm, and my shoulder wouldn't stop shaking. It spasmed once every 10 seconds, always to the right, always just enough to make my spine shift. When I finally looked in the mirror, the one I'd forgotten to cover, I saw it. My posture. Not slouched, not tired. Bent. Like a paper doll halfway folded in someone's palm. I tried to stretch. Each time I pulled upward, my neck resisted. My back curved further. And when I pressed both palms flat against the wall, something inside me, something internal, snapped. Not loud, not painful, just quiet. Like a crease settling into the page of a book that had always meant to be folded. Lao Niang came that night, uninvited, unannounced. She found me lying on the floor, curled slightly, like a question mark made of flesh. She didn't speak. She only reached into her sleeve and pulled out a small brush, horsehair, stained with black ink. Then she took off my shirt and began to paint. "This is not to stop it," she whispered. "It's to slow it down." She drew lines along my spine, symbols I couldn't read, marks that curved and looped like the strokes of ancient characters, but none were complete. They all stopped mid-air, folded mid-thought. "She's preparing you," Lao Niang said. "Piece by piece, she folds the body before she folds the soul. You'll still feel like yourself until the last joint clicks into place." I looked up at her, my voice thin. "Why me?" She stared for a long time. Her eyes held pity and something else, fear maybe, or regret. "Because you came back, and because your blood remembers what your mind has forgotten." That night, I tried to sleep flat on the floor, on my back, arms stretched, legs even. I tied my hands to the bedposts with rope, just to be sure. But when I awoke, I was kneeling, perfectly, silently, with my hands folded in front of me. And the rope? Still tied, still knotted, but now wrapped around my own neck. I didn't scream. I couldn't. My throat wouldn't move the way it used to. Later that morning, I looked at my hand, just a glance, and noticed something I'd missed. My fingerprints were fading. They were no longer whorls and ridges. They were becoming creases, fine lines like paper folded flat too many times. And when I looked at my palm under a flashlight, I saw ink. Red ink, spelling out a name I didn't remember ever writing. Mei Lian. And for the first time since I returned to Kotong, I cried, not out of ain, but because I knew my body was not mine anymore. It was being shaped, softly, patiently, lovingly, by hands I could not see. I found her near the edge of the village, a crumbling hut swallowed by vines and rot. No lights, no smoke, just silence. The villagers called her Old Shiu. They said she was the last one who helped bury Mei Lian, the one who held the umbrella, the one who kept her mouth shut and lived until now. She opened the door before I knocked, eyes white with cataracts, fingers gnawed like tree roots, but her voice, clear, sharp, unapologetically alive. "You came too late," she rasped. "She's already folding you." I didn't argue. I simply sat across from her on the floor where the wood was soft and smelled of ash, and I listened. "Mei Lian wasn't supposed to be the bride," she said. "She was supposed to be the binder. In our village, we always had one, a girl raised from birth to carry sorrow. She would wear red, marry no one, and walk beneath the umbrella until the rain forgave us. But the magistrate saw her beauty. He wanted her. The elders were cowards. They gave her to him. So she knelt, not for the village, not for the sky, but for him. And when he was done with her, he told us to bury her." "She begged," old Shu said. Her voice cracked, not for her life, but for her name. She said, "Don't let me be folded without being remembered." So I took a brush. I wrote her name on the inside of her umbrella in red ink with the last blood that leaked from her mouth. Then I held the umbrella upright while they lowered her in, and I told her I was sorry. Old Shu fell silent. Her hands shook in her lap, not from age, but from memory. Finally, she spoke again. "She didn't die alone. You understand that, don't you? There were others already buried there, other brides, other binders, not dead, just forgotten. And she woke them." She reached beneath the floorboards and pulled out a long cloth-wrapped bundle. Inside was a wedding fan, faded red, covered in symbols I didn't recognize. But in the center, etched deep in old ink and bone, 7 names. Only one was crossed out, Mei Lian. The rest, still waiting. "She's not just haunting us," old Shu whispered. "She's continuing the ceremony, one name at a time. Each time someone touches the umbrella, she chooses another. She folds them like paper blessings until she has enough." "Enough for what?" I asked. She smiled, not kindly. "To finish the wedding." I stood to leave, but before I stepped outside, old Shu said one last thing. Her voice no longer human, something layered beneath it. "When she folds the final name, the umbrella won't stand anymore. It will open on its own, and the sky will split." Outside, the rain had stopped, for the first time in a week, but the silence it left behind felt worse than thunder. And hanging from my door back home was a folded wedding fan, tied with red string and written in fresh ink across its edge. My name. The umbrella wasn't meant to last this long. It wasn't made for time. It was made for memory, for suffering folded tight enough to carry across generations, for silence that would never decay. I returned to Laonyang the next day, carrying the folded wedding fan. Her face darkened the moment she saw it. "You've been named," she said. "You're inside the pattern now. She's preparing the umbrella to receive you." I asked her what that meant. She didn't answer, not directly. Instead, she walked to the far wall and slid open a hidden panel. Behind it, sealed in a glass case, was a second umbrella, older, cracked, half collapsed. its red paper almost black with age. "This was the first," she said, "the one Mei Lian carried before it was taken from her." I stared at it. It was wrong. At first glance, it looked like dyed parchment stretched over bamboo ribs, but the texture was uneven, almost like skin. The ridges were too organic, the sheen too moist. "Is that?" I began. She nodded. "Human. The paper is skin. Not hers, not yet. The umbrella is always made from the one before, the last folded, the last failed. To carry grief, it must be bound with pain." She pulled the case open. The smell hit me immediately. Iron, mold, and something else, a kind of wet incense, burned into the pores of the umbrella. They used blood for ink, to paint symbols of remembrance and restraint. But when the ink fades, the sorrow leaks. She opened the umbrella slowly. A droplet fell from its tip. Red, thick, warm. Not water, not ink, blood. It slid down the shaft and pooled on the floor. It didn't spread. It sat in a perfect circle, like an eye watching. "Why is it crying?" I asked. "Because the one inside is still mourning," she said. "Because her name was never spoken aloud after she was folded. Because memory without voice becomes venom." She handed me a cloth. On it were hundreds of tiny brushstrokes, names, words, all smeared. "These are the others," she said. "Each folded, each failed. When the umbrella cries, it remembers, and every tear is a scream from one of them, but folded so tight it comes out as rain." The storm, the endless rain, the fog that never lifts. It wasn't weather. It was grief trying to return to the world. And the umbrella was the mouth. That night, I brought the folded fan back home and placed it on the altar. I lit incense. I recited her name. I whispered apologies. But the fan trembled, and in the silence that followed, I heard a sound that no prayer could stop. Paper, stretching, opening, crying. I ran outside. The umbrella was there. Of course it was. Open now, fully, facing the sky. And from its center, a single drop fell. It landed on my forehead, warm, sticky. I wiped it away. My fingers came back red. And in that moment, I knew. It wasn't the umbrella that cried. It was her. I found the map in the strangest place. Not in a library, not in a temple, but carved into the ceiling of my grandfather's attic, hidden beneath layers of soot and cobwebs, above the sleeping mat where I once played as a child. At first glance, it looked like an old astrological chart, circles, lines, concentric patterns etched with a chisel's delicate hand. But when I turned my head sideways, I saw it. The shape, unmistakable, elegant, terrifying. A red paper umbrella viewed from above. The map wasn't decorative, it was a blueprint. The village of Kotang was never designed for living, it was designed for binding. Every road curved outward from a single point, the shrine. Every alley traced a rib of the umbrella. The main street formed the central spine. The wells, the homes, the school, each placed with disturbing precision, like folding marks on origami. And at the very center, a circle, small, hollow, marked only with a single character: Mo, grave. I rushed to the shrine. The rain had stopped for 2 days now, but no one celebrated. The villagers stayed inside, curtains drawn, doors nailed shut, because they knew what I had just learned. The umbrella wasn't just an object, it was the village itself, and it was beginning to unfold. I reached the shrine and stared down at the stone floor. The old altar, the faded carvings, the floorboards split in long, clean lines, like deliberate creases. I pulled at the center tile. It lifted too easily. Beneath it, stairs, descending into blackness. The air was thick, wet, smelled of rust and memory. Each step down felt heavier than the last. At the bottom, I found the grave. Not a coffin, not a tomb. A hole. Circular, deep, its walls lined with thin, brittle paper, red-stained, cracked with age. And at the bottom, almost hidden beneath years of dust, a closed umbrella, crooked, small, like a child's, but breathing. As I stepped closer, my chest tightened, my legs weakened, my body wanted to kneel, and when I resisted, my spine cracked. One loud pop like a knuckle snapping backward. I fell forward, hands catching on the paper-lined wall. And in that moment, I saw it clearly. Each rib of the umbrella was carved with names, not written, carved, like bones etched with memories. Some were ancient, some still fresh. One of them was mine. I scrambled back. Above me, the light from the shrine flickered, and then I saw her. Not standing, not floating, hanging. Her body draped from the ceiling, arms slack, head tilted unnaturally to one side. Her hair flowed downward like ink in water. Her wedding dress stained, but still red. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking at the map above, watching as it slowly, quietly unfolded. Each time a name is added, she whispered, a rib straightens. Each rib unlocks the village, and when it opens fully, she turned to me. Her smile was gentle, crooked. The sky will remember what was done beneath it. I ran, climbing out, gasping. The air had changed. The roads had shifted. What used to be curved lanes were now straight lines. The outer edge of the village had begun to open, like petals blooming in reverse. And in the center, the shrine had begun to sink. Kotang was no longer a place. It was a mechanism. And the final rib was me. The village was folding outward, but I was folding inward. Each breath felt smaller than the last. My ribs moved unevenly. My shoulder blades ached, twitching as if they were trying to close around my spine like paper corners curling in the rain. Still, I walked. Past the sunken shrine, past the crooked streets, to the place that had called me since I first saw the umbrella, the chamber beneath the village. I found the entrance near the banyan tree where the children once played. A stone slab had cracked open after the rain stopped. Beneath it, a tunnel, spiraling, descending, carved with prayer marks so old they bled into the walls. As I descended, I began to feel them. The names, whispered, not aloud, but through my bones, like something was reading me from the inside. The tunnel opened into a wide chamber, silent, breathing. The air was wet with memory, dense, metallic, and sweet in a way that made me want to vomit. And at the center, suspended in ropes of red silk, was the great umbrella. It wasn't paper, not anymore. Its canopy was made of stitched skin, thin and stretched until the veins became calligraphy. The ribs were human bones, polished, sharpened, and arranged in perfect symmetry. Each rib bore a name, some written in ink, some etched with blades, some burned into the marrow itself. And all around the base, faces, pressed into the red membrane, not drawn, not sculpted, real, folded, as if the umbrella had swallowed them and trapped their last scream beneath its surface. I saw their mouths, their eyes, their hands, and I saw her, Mei Lian, her body folded in on itself, spine contorted, knees tucked beneath her chin, as if someone had creased her soul and tucked her away like an apology no one would read. But her eyes were open, and she was looking at me. I staggered back, but the walls moved. They weren't stone, they were pages, pages made of red paper. Each one bore a story, a soul, a folding. I brushed my fingers across one and felt it twitch beneath my skin. It showed me a boy, 12, smiling, touching the umbrella on a dare. 2 days later, he disappeared. His voice still echoes in the rain. Another page showed a woman, 30, pregnant. She tried to burn the umbrella. They found her body twisted backward, still clutching a matchbook. Each page, a warning, a record, a name. And then I found the last page, still blank, except for a wet outline, shaped exactly like me. As I stared, it began to absorb the warmth from my fingers, and in the center, in fresh red ink, my name began to write itself, character by character, K-H-A-I. You were never meant to be the reader. You were meant to be the next paragraph, a voice behind me whispered. I turned. Mei Lian was standing now, unfolded, her joints cracked with every movement like branches bending the wrong way, her head tilted, eyes unfocused, lips sewn with invisible thread. But still she spoke. I was folded to hold the pain. You will be folded to complete it. The umbrella opened above me, wider than the sky, ribs stretching like the bones of God, red paper shimmering with memory, screaming without sound, each face turned toward me. And in that moment, I understood. This wasn't a curse. This was a library of those who had tried to undo brief, of those who reached for the umbrella thinking they could set it right. And now I was being catalogued. I screamed, not with my mouth, my body couldn't move anymore, but with my shadow. It flailed on the wall behind me, breaking apart, reshaping into something else, bent, angled, twisted, and then folded. The folded page bearing my name was still pulsing. It breathed beneath my fingertips, drinking in my warmth, writing my identity as if my life were a sentence to be recorded, not lived. But before the final character etched itself into the red, I tore my hand away. The page screamed, not aloud, but inside me. A sound like torn silk inside the ribs, like a contract objecting to its own breach. I stumbled backward into the darkness of the archive chamber, pressing against the damp, red-papered walls. My breath was ragged. The air thickened, as if even oxygen now had rules, rituals, clauses. And then I saw it. In the center of the far wall, a scroll, hung with care, sealed with wax the color of dried liver. Its surface shimmered as though sweat had formed on its skin. I broke the seal, and the words inside bled. It was a marriage document, ancient, ceremonial, but unmistakably legal, written in both bureaucratic script and ritualistic calligraphy. The union of sorrow and service, witnessed by sky, soil, and silence. Bride, Mei Ling of Kotong. Groom, Magistrate Yan. Dowry, 3 silks, 1 umbrella, 7 prayers. Terms: the bride shall kneel under heaven on the 13th reign. She shall carry the umbrella as container of grief, not defense. She shall bleed upon marriage and so bind the land. Her name shall be forgotten in the mouths of men, but remembered in rain. Should she resist, she will not be punished, but folded. Should she die before completion, her memory shall become law. Should any blood of her blood return to Kotong, they will inherit her contract. I froze. That last line. I read it again and again. Should any blood of her blood return to Kotong, they will inherit her contract. I wasn't just caught in a curse. I was the clause. My grandfather, his silence, the letters, his final warning. He knew. He had signed this. Somewhere between those pages, faded and tucked into the margins, I found his mark. A trembling signature, dated 65 years ago. He had returned here once and escaped, but only by signing me in his place. I stared at the final line of the scroll. It was blank, a space for a new name. Mine was already bleeding into it, soaking through the parchment like ink from a broken pen. I dropped the scroll. It curled in midair, folded itself once, twice, 3 times, and vanished. The walls began to shake. All around me, the red pages peeled back, revealing rows of other contracts, other names. Some were children, some were old men. One had been scratched out violently, a woman named Shu. Old Shu, the gravekeeper. She had tried to break free. She had failed. Mei Ling appeared again, not in flesh this time, but in red thread. Her figure stitched into the air like embroidery animated by sorrow. Her face was featureless, her spine bent at an impossible angle. She opened her stitched mouth. I did not curse them. They legalized my grief. They passed it down like land, like obligation. Now I am not a ghost. I am a contract that remembers. The umbrella above me began to spin. Each rib clicked once, like the ticking of a court clerk's stamp. The ceiling became a ledger. The floor became parchment, and I became a signature in motion. I tried to scream, but my mouth wouldn't open, because it wasn't mine anymore. It belonged to the contract. The storm returned on the 7th night, not with wind, not with thunder, but with teeth. It didn't fall from the sky, it rose from the ground. Rain hissed up through the cracks in the stone paths, like steam escaping a boiling body. The roads quivered beneath my feet, and then, with a groan like the bones of the earth breaking, the main road split, not naturally, deliberately. Stone peeled back like paper, mud churned like something was breathing beneath it, and then the shrine collapsed. The villagers didn't scream, they didn't run. They simply knelt in doorways, behind curtains, in the dark, not in fear, in resignation, as if they'd been expecting this, as if they remembered it. I approached the crater where the shrine once stood. Steam curled from its center. Red mist rose like incense. The heat was unbearable, but my body moved without my consent, downward toward the pulsing heart of the wound. At the bottom, I saw her, Mei-Lian, not a ghost, not a shadow, a body, still dressed in her wedding gown, soaked through with blood and rain. The red silk had fused to her skin. Her hands were folded across her chest, her knees tucked beneath her jaw, her spine twisted, broken in 4 clean bends like origami made of flesh, and through her abdomen, the umbrella. Still there, still open, still crooked. Its shaft had splintered her bones, anchored her to the earth like a tent pole, pinning down a soul that never stopped screaming. She opened her eyes, wide, wet, full of centuries. She looked at me and smiled. I fell to my knees, not from fear, not from pain, from weight. A spiritual heaviness, an ancestral pull, as if generations of grief had collapsed into my chest. And when I looked down at my hands, they were folding themselves, fingers curling inward, knuckles bending in directions they weren't meant to go, not breaking, becoming instructions, like I was a piece of paper in divine hands. A voice filled the crater, not hers, mine. I take the name, I take the shape, I carry the fold. I clamped my mouth shut, but the voice kept speaking from inside my skull. I am the next rib, I am the final crease. The umbrella began to spin, slow, whispering, spraying droplets of blood like rain. Each rib clicked once, then again, until only one remained still locked. Me. I crawled backward, trembling, bones screaming, but the ground beneath me shifted. A platform rose from the soil, round, red, slick. An altar, a mirror, a page, and in its center, a second body, fresh, still breathing, folded just like her, wearing my face. I blinked. It blinked. I screamed. It smiled. A sound echoed above us. Bells, not of celebration, of procession. I looked up the crater walls. The villagers stood at the edge, holding red lanterns. They were chanting. Words I didn't recognize, but my blood did. And from behind them, a line of folded brides, each with no face, each with no mouth, each holding an umbrella, open, crooked, weeping. And then I understood. This wasn't an exorcism. It was a welcoming, a ceremony, and I was the last guest. The moment my double opened its eyes, the sky tore open. not with lightning, not with thunder, but with sound. A low, inhuman vibration that cracked tiles, shattered lanterns, and sent birds plunging from the clouds in mid-air death spirals. It wasn't a storm. It was a scream. Long, continuous, and wordless. The kind of scream that doesn't come from a throat, but from the memory of being silenced. The crater around me convulsed. The red mist thickened, rising in violent spirals. The brides at the rim began to unfold, joints popping backward, limbs straightening in unnatural jerks like they were being unwrapped by invisible fingers. Their umbrellas spun above their heads, each click a heartbeat, each turn a countdown. Then something touched my back. Not a hand, not a spirit. A fold. It wasn't visible, but I felt it, a pressure that slid beneath my shoulder blades and creased me like paper, down the center, inward, tight. I collapsed forward, my spine cracked, not broken, but bent, knees drawn to chest, neck forced down, arms folded over my heart. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. But I was still awake, still feeling everything. The sky's scream deepened. Now it sounded like thousands of voices, layered over each other, from all ages, all languages, crying, laughing, begging, cursing, all trapped in a spiral of endless repetition, a symphony of the folded. Mei Lian stepped forward. She no longer walked. She floated, the tips of her toes dragging streams of blood across the altar. Her hands no longer looked human. They had become creases, living instructions, lines of fate, the geometry of grief. She reached for my face and pinched the skin between my eyebrows like a corner of paper. I felt the first fold begin. My thoughts bent, memories twisted. My mother's face became someone else's. My childhood bedroom turned into the red chamber of the shrine. Reality was being folded flat. Another pinch at my shoulder. Emotion folded. Joy vanished. Fear dulled into something soft and wet and permanent. I was being reshaped, not destroyed, just reformatted. Like paper bent into something it was never meant to become, a thing that looked human but couldn't hold words anymore. The brides began to chant. Their umbrellas opened in unison. Blood poured upward, not downward, up toward the torn sky, as if gravity had been reversed by grief. The storm drank it, and the sky finally began to crack. I don't mean clouds. I mean the actual sky, the dome above the world, fractured. From beyond it, I saw paper. Not stars, not galaxies, just endless red parchment stretching in every direction, and beneath it, black ink veins that pulsed with memory. The world was just one fold, and now it was opening. Mei Lian's face hovered inches from mine. She whispered gently, "You understand now. To carry pain is not the curse. To fold it is, because folded pain becomes shape, and shape becomes ritual, and ritual becomes law." She pressed her forehead to mine, and I saw it. All of them. The brides, the binders, the boys who touched the umbrella, the mothers who looked too long, the ones who prayed, the ones who screamed, all of them, folded and filed inside the umbrella, inside the sky, inside me. Suddenly, I felt my body pulled upright, still bent, but now held aloft like a ceremonial object. The villagers below me chanted louder. Red paper rained from the clouds. A bell rang 3 times. And then, everything stopped. Silence. No movement. No breath. No sound. Just the open umbrella spinning slowly above my head. And one final voice. The last rib has clicked. The bell rang 3 times. Then silence. Then music, but not of joy. The procession began with a drumbeat so slow it sounded like a heartbeat in its final hour. Thump, pause. Thump, pause. And beneath it, the creak of wood. Wheels, cartwheels, like something old and sacred was being dragged through the mud. And on that cart, me. I couldn't move, not because I was bound, but because my body was no longer mine to move. My arms lay folded across my chest, my spine bent into the shape of a bowing servant, my knees drawn under me in ceremonial stillness. I wasn't lying on the cart. I was displayed, like an offering, or a corpse, or both. Around me, villagers in red robes walked with lowered heads. Each one held a crooked umbrella, identical in shape, different in bloodstain. No one spoke. No one looked up. But I could hear them whispering, beneath their breath, chanting syllables that bent the air soft and sharp at once. Fold to remember. Fold to forgive, fold to contain what must not return. We passed through the main road, except it wasn't the road anymore. It was a spine, each stone a vertebra, each step a click. The village itself was walking with us, unfolding, stretching, turning inside out one ritual at a time. And in the distance, the shrine had changed. No longer a building, now a gate, made of red paper and white bone, open, waiting. At every doorway, a folded bride stood still, some headless, some eyeless, some with mouths sewn shut by spider silk. Each held a candle. Each candle burned inward toward the wax, not dripping, but sucking light back into the wick. The flames whispered as we passed my name, again and again, not screamed, folded. Then came the children, dozens of them, all barefoot, all holding tiny umbrellas made of wax paper and hair. Their faces were blank, their eyes filled with rainwater that didn't fall. And when I passed, they knelt, not to honor, to replace, as if the procession had done this many times before and always needed one more. The cart stopped before the gate. Mei Lian waited there, her face veiled in white, her umbrella now unfolded into a perfect circle above her. She had become the bride of the folded world, and I, the groom, or the offering, or both. She spoke, not to me, but to the sky.
The final rib has joined. The contract is closed. The sorrow is now sealed. She raised her hand. All the brides behind her opened their umbrellas at once. A crack filled the air like paper tearing across the heavens, and from the open gate a rushed-out wind. Not cold, hungry. It tasted the air, the names, the bones. It found me. My body lifted from the cart, not by rope, by invitation. I floated through the gate, my arms still folded, my breath still silent. Behind me, the villagers bowed, the brides wept blood, and the cart collapsed into ash. Inside the gate, there was no ground, only red sky, only paper wind, only the soft rustling sound of pages being turned and turned and turned, until I no longer remembered who had written me. Then came the final word, not spoken, stamped on the back of my neck, hot, permanent, a seal in blood, marking me not as a man, but as a ritual complete. The wedding was done. The procession had ended. But the umbrella still spun above all of us, waiting, because when sorrow is folded, it always waits for the next hand to open it. The village was quiet, too quiet. The kind of silence that doesn't bring peace, only pressure. As if the world was holding its breath and didn't know how to let go. The procession was over. I had crossed the gate, been sealed, folded, archived. But I wasn't gone. Not truly. The folded do not vanish. They stay, tucked just behind the veil of reality, stacked like sacred paper in a drawer no one dares open. We don't haunt, we observe, we record, we wait. The red sky remained above Kotang, and beneath it a boy no older than 10 chased a paper lantern that had rolled away during the final ceremony. His mother called for him once, but he didn't hear. Children never do. They hear the rain more clearly than they hear warnings. And just past the broken stone steps of the sunken shrine, he found it. The umbrella, still crooked, still standing. Not open this time, not closed either, just resting, like a jaw waiting to unhinge. He reached for it. His fingers touched the red paper, and in that instant I felt it. So did everyone, the folded, the brides, Mei Lian. The entire archive shivered because grief had been touched again. And once touched, it must respond. The boy blinked, then screamed, but the sound didn't leave his mouth. It entered the umbrella, like it was being absorbed syllable by syllable. His shadow split in two. One side shrank, the other expanded. His arms twisted, first softly, then violently. His knees snapped in the wrong direction. His spine curled inward like paper curling in a flame. And then he folded. Not fell. Folded. Neatly. Precisely. One arm across the chest, one leg beneath the other, chin tucked to collarbone. Like a letter. Like an apology. like a gift someone didn't ask for, but must now keep forever. The villagers didn't move. They knew better. The wind picked up and the umbrella opened on its own, slowly, lovingly. And from inside it, the sound of the boy's scream continued, trapped, repeating itself like a skipping record. I watched from the veil, and for the first time since being folded, I wept, because I understood. The umbrella doesn't kill, it remembers, and it doesn't do so out of hate or revenge or even sorrow. It folds pain because the world keeps handing it more. Mei Lian appeared beside me, her face softer now, not smiling, not mourning, just watching. "You see it now," she whispered. "They don't fear the umbrella because it hurts them. They fear it because it will never forget them." She turned away as the umbrella lifted from the earth, carrying the boy's folded body with it, not flying, floating, up into the red sky, where thousands of others waited, faces pressed into the canopy, eyes closed, jaws tight, waiting to be unfolded or to be joined by one more. And below them, a new umbrella appeared, crooked, wet, standing perfectly still at the edge of the road, waiting for the next mistake.
There's one rule in Kotang, older than the shrine, older than the curse, older even than Mei Lian. You may fold grief, but you must never try to unfold it. That's what keeps the veil intact. That's what keeps the sorrow contained. That's what stops the dead from coming back twisted. But desperation is louder than wisdom, and grief, when left to rot, eventually tries to undo itself. It was the boy's father. He hadn't spoken during the procession, hadn't cried, hadn't knelt, just stood behind his closed door, watching through cracks in the wood, rage growing behind his silence. Now, days later, the village heard the crash of wood splitting. Someone had broken into the shrine. I saw it from the veil. He had a lantern, a blade, a bundle of dried herbs clenched in a shaking hand, and he was standing before the archival canopy, where all the folded souls now hung in stasis, pressed gently into the umbrella's skin like creases in sacred fabric. He found his son, his little outline, folded tight, tucked gently between Mei Lian's collarbone and a nameless bride's cheek. The father reached out and pulled. At first, nothing happened. The boy's shape held. But then, a noise, not a cry, not a tear, a tearing. The kind of sound paper makes when it resists. And then, the fold tore. The boy fell to the floor, breathing, eyes open, but wrong. He blinked once, twice, then screamed, not in his own voice, not in any voice. The scream came from everywhere at once, like 1,000 lungs suddenly exhaled through one broken mouth. The umbrella began to bleed, not drip, bleed, from every rib, from every name, from every bride and binder and forgotten victim. And the boy, he stood, unfolded, but not returned. His joints no longer bent the way a human should. His eyes were mirrors, His spine was hollow. Inside his chest, wind. And in that wind, voices. He turned to his father, spoke in 7 voices at once. You tried to unfold what was never yours to fold. You tried to undo what was meant to hold shape forever. Now your grief will walk. The father screamed, but the boy didn't move. The scream simply echoed, bouncing between the father's ribs, ricocheting like a trapped thought, until he fell to the floor, folded. One motion, clean, quiet, as if the boy had never been the one in danger at all. The villagers gathered, too late. The boy walked past them, eyes unfocused, umbrella held high, crooked, and where he stepped, the ground folded beneath him. Streets bent inward, walls creased, windows curled, like the village was becoming a letter again, being prepared for delivery. To where? No one knew, but it had no return address. Mei Lian appeared in the smoke. She didn't look angry. She looked tired. She touched the torn crease where the boy had been pulled, and it bled again. You can't unfold the dead, because once pain takes shape, it forgets how to be whole. All you bring back is the outline of what hurt you. The umbrella rose again, this time with no body, just the sound of paper flapping in a wind that didn't blow. And behind it, all the folded began to stir. They twitched, they rustled, they cracked, not waking, just remembering. And below them all, a new crease began to form. This one had no name, because it belonged to all of us. They multiplied overnight. No one saw them arrive. No one heard them open. But when dawn came, there were umbrellas everywhere. In doorways, on rooftops, balanced on graves. In children's hands, between old lovers, next to the shrine that was no longer a shrine. All red, all crooked, all standing open in perfect silence. Each one wept blood. Each one leaned slightly east toward the mountain pass, toward the world beyond Koitang. This had never happened before. For generations the curse had folded inward, contained within the boundaries of the village, wrapped in silence, pressed beneath stone. But now it was spreading. The villagers gathered in the square, pale and trembling. No one spoke aloud, because to speak was to be heard. And now the umbrellas were listening. They tilted slightly whenever someone tried to pray. They turned when someone tried to run. Even in the absence of wind, they followed. I stood at the edge of the veil, folded, silent, watching, but no longer hidden, because now even the folded were beginning to bleed through. The veil had thinned, the walls of the archive cracked. Names once sealed now floated freely in the red sky, spinning like paper talismans soaked in ink. And then I saw it, the extra umbrella. It was small, child-sized, made not of paper, but of skin. It had no shadow, no source, no owner. It simply appeared, and with it came imbalance. The world of the folded has rules. 7 umbrellas for 7 names, 1 for each sorrow, 1 for each contract. But now There were 8. One too many. An umbrella without a name, a fold without a story. A curse that had become self-replicating. Mei Lin appeared beside me, her features flickering like flame in the wind. "It wasn't supposed to be like this," she whispered. "We folded to protect them." But the grief became greedy. It started folding even those who hadn't touched it, even those who only remembered. She turned toward the child umbrella. This one wasn't made, it was born. A wind blew across Khoi Tong, sharp, cold, final, and with it came the sound. Crack, snap, fold. One by one, villagers began to crease, without touching anything, without speaking, without moving. Their bodies bent as if following an ancient pattern they were never taught, but somehow always knew. And still the umbrellas watched, smiling, not with mouths, but with the shape of their tilt. By nightfall, the entire village had become still, not silent, just paused, like someone had pressed a hand against the page and left a dent. The sky turned black, but the umbrellas glowed, lit from within by the pain they remembered, and from the mountainside path, one umbrella began to walk. Not carried, walking, its tip tapping the stone gently, its ribs shivering like breath, its shadow stretching far too long behind it. No one followed it, because no one remained who hadn't been folded, except me. I stood at the edge of Khoi Tong, veil torn, identity blurred. I wasn't alive, wasn't dead, wasn't archived, just stuck, unfolded but unwelcome. And when that 8th umbrella passed me, it turned just slightly, as if asking, "Shall we begin again?" The umbrella stood in front of me, small, crooked, alive. It had no hand to hold it, no owner to guide it, but it moved, as if grief itself had grown legs and decided it no longer needed permission to walk. Its tip tapped the stone in slow, steady rhythm. Chut, chut, chut. Behind it, the village of Kotang no longer breathed. Folded bodies, folded homes, folded prayers. All tucked away in a silence so absolute it felt like the world had been placed inside a drawer and forgotten. I stood alone, not folded, not free, somewhere between echo and outline. And the umbrella spoke, not in sound, but in motion. It opened, wide, endless, and inside it was me. Not the person I remembered, not the man who came back, but a figure made of grief and guilt, creased in the places I never wanted to admit were broken. A version of myself I had hidden even from mirrors, now drawn in red paper and white bone. The umbrella wanted me to enter, to complete the fold, to become the veil that holds the next sorrow in place. Behind me, the sky no longer held stars, only names. Thousands of them, each one spinning slowly, each one waiting. Because once sorrow is remembered, it demands a witness. I took one step forward. The umbrella trembled. Its ribs spread like arms. I could feel it.
the final choice. Become the new center, the still point in the spiral, the archive that holds the folded world together. Or let it collapse. Let the crease tear. Let the memory spill across mountains, cities, oceans. Let everyone fold. I looked down at my shadow, but there was nothing. Just space. An absence. I had no center, no shape, no will, no self. Because in trying to carry grief for everyone, I had forgotten to carry myself. The umbrella pulsed with light, not warm, stern. It was tired of asking. It began to fold toward me, one rib at a time, a closing jaw, a sealed fate. And just before it reached me, I knelt, not in surrender, in choice. I whispered the names, all of them, the brides, the children, the forgotten, the innocent, the cursed, even the ones who folded others. I spoke them into the earth. I carved them into silence. And as the umbrella wrapped around me, I understood. To fold pain is not to hide it. It is to hold it until it becomes memory, and then release it gently, like paper drifting down a mountain. The umbrella closed and vanished. The red sky lifted. The stars returned, one by one. The village did not rise, but the veil re-stitched itself, not as punishment, as protection. I was gone, but I was not lost. Somewhere in another village, in another rain, a child will see a crooked umbrella. And when they reach for it, it will not fold. It will simply lean away and wait for someone else. Because grief does not want to be erased. It just wants to be understood.